Celtic world has more than its share of the supernatural, legends, and myth, which sometimes cross the line into reality. I tell those tales here on Dark Celtic History. The Revenge Tree. A Scottish woman named Mary, who was embittered that the man who had killed her husband lived so close on a neighboring clan land. Unable to exact the revenge she wanted, she would climb to a special spot where her and her husband met and fell in love, and she would pray that God would guide her, show her how she makes this man pay for what he had taken from her. Misguided as she was, God would not answer such a selfish prayer. But the world is full of spirits that will. So day after day she went and prayed that God would grant her revenge on her enemies. And day after day, a demon trapped in that tree, many years ago by a resourceful druid, was forced to listen to her prayers. Finally, the demon came to the realization that if he could not get out to escape her, and since he remembered the spell that trapped him, he could trap her inside the tree with him. And so the very next day, he said the words as she prayed, leaning against the tree. The roots sprung up from the ground, and branches bent to his will, and the tree grasped her and drew her inside where evil awaited her. Fear had overcome her, but when she calmed down, she realized she had become a part of the tree. An evil little smile cracked the bark where her face was. She could feel everything every branch or root could feel. Every sense she had was now that of the tree. Then the demon spoke, and her fear returned. But it didn't take long for her to figure out that the demon was as much a prisoner as she was, maybe more. The demon languished for centuries and learned nothing of the tree in which he was confined. This woman had spent every day learning what she could do. So months after her imprisonment, the man she hated more than any other, the man who killed her husband, Alan McPherson, walked up to the tree she was within. Apparently he had purchased her land from her family when she was declared dead. She wished so hard that the man would just get within reach so she could reach out and just rip him apart. This, by the way, was the most exciting thing to happen for the demon in some years, so he encouraged her. Finally, McPherson got close enough, and she could hear him discussing a point of strategy with another military leader. Then finally they began to trade secrets, plans of war, ambush, and attacks. She remembered it all. An army of Highlanders would be marching through this area and probably set up camp on this very spot. They would let them settle down and get comfortable, and then in the dark of night they would strike, and the much needed reinforcements to the war raging down south would never come, and this evil man would profit from his neighbor's annihilation. 2 days later, a large contingent of Highland warriors did make camp on this very site. She grabbed the first warrior she thought who looked of importance and demanded he bring his leader to her. The warrior, who was kind of freaked out that a tree had just talked to him, eagerly brought Chief MacDonald, and she repeated what she knew, what she had overheard. The only thing she asked was for them to bring the evil Mr. McPherson before her, so that she could exact the revenge she so desperately wanted. That night, the Highland warriors laid in wait, and when the ambush began, they surprised the invaders and killed all who did not flee. All of them except one. The evil Mr. McPherson ended up on his knees in front of a tree. Beaten and bewildered, he watched as the woman of the man he murdered emerged from the tree and got ever closer to him. Within inches of this man, she ran a limb through his heart and killed him. She turned and smiled at the chief for fulfilling his promise. But she spoke no words. She stopped fighting the tree's grip on her and was drawn back into her prison. The chief stood there as he watched her do this, and the only thought in his mind wasn't on how gruesome the act she just committed was. It was on how beautiful this woman was. So he made himself a promise right there. If he survived the coming battle, he would do what he could do to help her. A month later, this Highland chief and about half of the men that he had come with entered the valley again, and caught sight of the tree. He had his men make camp away from the tree, and he and a companion walked up to her. He greeted her, and she greeted him back. He then explained that his companion was a master of the dark arts, a witch, and that she could free her from her tree if she so chose. The tree nodded yes, and the witch went to work. Later that evening, after hours of incantations, the chief was woke and properly introduced to the beautiful woman, and they lived happily ever after.